So the topic of the day is how to run a smarter business with Zia. And so what I really want to get to is when we're talking about AI, what is real and what is just hype? So Zia, you could call it an acronym. We usually say it means Zoho Intelligent Assistant. And so really it's like the AI initiative of Zoho. And so Zia is built into a bunch of different Zoho applications, and it's always contextual to like whatever that application is used for. So really what I'm talking about today is AI. And so that's what I mean when I say I want to answer this question of what's real and what's hype, because AI is one of those buzzwords that we're just always hearing about. And so you always hear these things that say AI is going to like revolutionize this industry, AI is going to change your business, and then you kind of wonder like, man, am I like missing out on something here? Like, how can I be using this today? And who is this available to also? Is this available to like a 10,000 person company, or can, a 5-person operation also make use of AI? Do I have to be a genius to use this? Or can any typical like business owner who doesn't know how to write a line of code make use of AI? So these are the kinds of things that I want to talk about. So we've been hearing about AI for a long time, and I mean like a really, really hecka long time. This goes back to like the 50s even. But one great example I found when I was doing a little bit of research on this was there's this book published in 1984 called Artificial Intelligence on the Commodore 64. And it had this amazing cover, which I'll try and zoom into so you guys can get a good look at that. This is how people saw the future back in 1984. And if you don't know what a Commodore 64 looks like, because I didn't, it looks like this. So, this is something that has been hyped for a very, very long time. And it's kind of funny looking back on the past versions of this hype and going, man, they had no idea, like we didn't even have Mario for like another few years after this, I think. And so it's just kind of funny to like look back at that history. But also, for pretty much as long as we've had this idea of like this imminent AI revolution, there's also been a certain amount of anxiety that AI is going to be something that's kind of like dangerous. That AI, could be a Terminator, or, it could just take the form of like some computer that is going to take your job. And so I found this amazing ad from actually a few years before that other book, where it's just all about how this guy is going to outperform all of his business rivals because he has a computer. And it says somewhere in here that I think it lets him hold like 1,600 typed pages in his computer. So that was going to give him the edge there. So obviously, that 80s AI revolution didn't quite come. And what's interesting about AI is that we kind of go through these cycles with AI, or these phases where like all this buzz gets built up and there's all this hype, and maybe there's a few AI companies and their stock is like going through the ceiling. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, people go, I've been hearing this hype for 5 years and I don't actually see any drastic changes in my life, so AI is BS. And so then it kind of goes through this trough period where we don't hear about it as often. And so, I think right now, we're in one of those phases where there's a lot of hype, and we're riding up that wave. And so what happens during these phases where everyone's talking about AI is that we all get really, really excited about it, and there is innovation happening. There is changes to technology that is happening. But then, usually, we kind of adapt to those changes pretty quickly, and then we kind of forget about them. And so there's actually this whole trend where whatever is like the most cutting edge version of like software, whatever is the most cutting edge version of like some kind of automated process is labeled as AI for like a few years, and then everyone is using it, and then they go, that's not AI, this is just a dumb computer. And then, the next phase comes along, and the next phase, and the next phase. So, is Zia going to take my job? This is something that has actually come up before at a past Zoholics event. People have asked us this. And personally, I think the answer is no, at least not anytime soon. And the reason for that is because we have to kind of explain what AI actually is to sort of answer this question. So generally, in today's AI wave, what we're talking about with artificial intelligence is two things. So one of them is machine learning. And machine learning is really just kind of like a fancy word for an algorithm that improves itself. So the more data that you feed into this algorithm, the better it gets at doing whatever kind of task it is maybe initially given a few sets of rules to sort of get going, but after that, it's just learning through examples only. And machine learning is completely transforming the way that we do a lot of things. So one really good example is Google Translate used to be pretty much just a set of manually coded translations. But what they actually did in the last few years is they changed a bunch of the ways that Google Translate works using machine learning. And this was actually so effective that they were able to take, let's say they knew how to translate Japanese into English, and they knew how to translate Korean into English. They could then feed these data sets into an AI, and then it could learn how to translate Japanese into Korean. So they could take this data and teach the machine how to do something without having to code in any of the rules. And so there's all kinds of other great examples of machine learning. Another good example also from Google is their work on the Waymo self-driving cars. Those cars have gotten better at driving over time because they actually have a fleet of them that's out on the roads all the time, learning from experience. And I actually used to live in Mountain View, California, which is where Google's original headquarters is. And I would see those cars going down the street all the time. And that was a few years ago, and everyone who lived in Mountain View kind of hated these cars because they were very slow, because they were just kind of taking it easy, trying not to kill anyone and cause a PR nightmare. But the other big thing that people are usually talking about when they say AI is natural language processing, or NLP for short. And so natural language processing can actually be seen as a subset of machine learning. And really what it just means is being able to talk to a computer the way that you would talk to a person, the way that you would talk to your friend. So instead of having to write a SQL query or having to just put in some code to make a machine do something, you could just say, hey, Zia, how many deals did I close last month? And you could just word that in English, and she would be able to understand what it is that you're saying. So generally speaking, when we talk about AI, it's really just these two things that are kind of part of this wave of the AI hype. But the question that we really want to get to, the really juicy part of this, is what can AI actually do today, and what can it do for my business? Because that's why you guys all came to this conference, right? I think the best answer to what AI can do for your business, and the best answer to why Zia is not going to be taking your job anytime soon, is kind of the same thing. And it's that AI is extremely good at doing two kinds of things very, very well. So the first thing is the stuff that you can't do. So for instance, Zia can analyze all of the times that every single customer has interacted with you ever, whether it's going on your website or filling out a survey or doing a phone call, and then can remember for all these different people what times they've interacted with you the most, and then Zia can suggest on a client-by-client basis, oh, this person, usually they're free around 12, or this person's usually free later in the day, right? So there's just no way that you could manage all of that as a person, right? You can't just have this robotic, machine-like way of going through all of that data and making all of these calculations. But I think what's more important and more pertinent is that artificial intelligence can do the things that you don't want to do. And this is really why Zia is probably not going to take your job. It's because a lot of the things that we use AI for are the things that we don't really want to deal with, you know? Like, everybody wants to have these dashboards where they can get interesting analytics and insights into their business and what's going on, but does anybody really like building all of those reports and those dashboards? Not really. And so this is really like kind of the main focus area of AI and business software today, is just that it will do all of the stuff that's too boring or too uninteresting or too dull that we just don't want to do. So now what I want to spend the rest of the session showing you guys is concrete examples of stuff that Zia can do that exists already in the software today and how it can help you. So I'll break this down by categories. The first thing is Zia for sales. So let's talk about what Zia can do in a sales context. The first thing, I already talked about this briefly, is that you can avoid the dreaded voicemail box. So if you're a salesperson and you use that best time to contact feature that's inside Zoho CRM, what it's really helping you do, if we actually explain this in terms of just like the value you're getting, is that you get these suggestions of when to reach somebody. If you're a salesperson and you spend 30% of your day just calling a number and getting a voicemail and leaving a message, that's money that you're not making. That's commission that you're not making. It's time that's being wasted. So with things like this best time to contact feature might not solve every single problem. It's not going to guarantee that you're going to avoid somebody's voicemail, but maybe you can cut out 10% of the times that you land on someone's voicemail because you know what times are going to be good times to call them, right? That could be a tremendous savings for a sales rep or an organization over the course of a long period of time. Another thing that Zia can do inside the CRM is that it can identify high-risk deals before they're lost. So if you turn on this feature inside your CRM, then what you'll see is when you go to the deals page, Zia will put these little prediction scores next to every single deal, and they'll be color-coded. And so this just kind of zooms it in. What it shows you is on a scale of 0 to 100, how likely you are to win any given deal within the next 30 days. And so what Zia is looking at is just the complete history of all of the deals that came before this, and it's going, okay, let's analyze the chunk of all the deals that you won. You know, what happened on those deals? How many phone calls typically did your sales reps go through with that client before the deal was won? How long did it typically take to win? What kinds of information did we have saved about that person in the CRM? And how long did it take us to get it? So Zia is analyzing all of this information in the background, and then the more data that you get over time, the better Zia gets at predicting which deals are going to close and which ones are not. So if you're a sales manager, what you can do is you can come into CRM and you already have a bunch of tools at your arsenal to maybe guess which deals are at risk of not closing and which ones, you know, are probably going to close. But this is just one more tool in your arsenal where you can go, okay, show me all the deals that have a low chance of closing. Are they all from a particular sales rep? Maybe they haven't been doing their calls. Or, you know, what's going on over here? Why have we not emailed this person within the first week of that last time that we talked to them, right? So it gives you a way to just dive into all of your information in a more intelligent way and to focus on these deals that would otherwise fall through the cracks. So Brent Leary, and one thing that he wrote about was how if salespeople can use natural language to interact with their CRM, then that's a huge barrier to adopting the CRM that begins to break down. And so, you know, if you've worked in a sales environment, you've probably encountered this before. Sometimes if you're introducing a CRM to a company for the first time or you're changing a CRM in a company, your sales reps are going to be very resistant to wanting to use it, right? Because maybe they just like entering stuff in their spreadsheet, or they like writing it down on a note, or they like, some other CRM, God forbid, and you can't convince them that your new CRM is going to help them and that it's going to be better for them. But one thing that you could try is like Zia Voice. So on the Zoho CRM mobile app, you can now enter information into the system without having to type it all out. So if you're like a sales rep who's busy, you're always on the go, you're out meeting people, when you get in that cab ride, you can just talk to Zia and say, hey, add a note to this person that I need to follow up with them in a month, or enter a new lead into my system. And I can have that as like a conversation rather than feeling like I'm just filling out a bunch of forms. And so it's just kind of a better way to interact with software. And so the sales manager can still get all of the benefits and all the information from using a CRM, and the sales rep just gets like an easier way to enter that information, which maybe feels a little bit less dull and boring. So another thing that you could do is you can ask Zia to pull up reports. So inside Zoho CRM, there's this little thing at the bottom called Ask Zia, and you can go into Ask Zia and you can just write questions to Zia. And in particular, like one thing you could say is like, show me all my leads by source, or show me all of the deals that we closed the last week, or show me the revenue this month, right? So you can just write these things instead of having to like search through the interface of the CRM, find the reports module, find that particular report. And so for people who are like really resistant to having to learn a new interface, people who don't want to have to learn how to navigate between all these things, that's just one more value add of giving them this better way of dealing with finding information. Okay, so that was by no means an exhaustive list of everything Zia can do to improve your sales, but I wanted to have time to talk about some of the other parts of your business too. So let's take a look at how Zia can help you with support. So one thing we have is that there's this anomaly detection feature built into Zia. So what you can do is you can have Zia analyze all of the tickets coming into your help desk, and then what will happen is if Zia sees suddenly, whoa, we got way more tickets today than we normally get, and they're all about a particular topic, Zia can give you that warning, and so it can help you to start troubleshooting problems and just give you kind of a pop-up without you having to dive into the data and do that manually. And then what you could do is you can take action off of that. So Zia might say, hey, there's a huge spike in tickets. You can then click on that spike, and it'll show you a breakdown of like the tags associated with those tickets. So you can get an idea of like, oh, is there like one particular offering we have where everybody is suddenly having a problem? And then you can maybe try and debug that a little bit faster. So besides just showing you this report of like all of your anomalies where you have like really high or really low tickets, there's other things that Zia can do which is useful too. So one, Zia can auto-tag the tickets coming into your help desk. So Zia will analyze the message that a customer has written and then be able to detect what subjects they've brought up. So you can manually tag tickets and say what they are about. Maybe it's a particular product or a particular service or just a certain kind of problem that you're always running into. But Zia can also do this for you, which makes it easier to analyze what kinds of things are having trouble over time. Because your customers aren't necessarily going to be able to tell you exactly what product is causing an issue, right? But you can at least kind of break these down into categories. One of my favorite features that Zia has is this autoresponder inside Zoho Desk. So I'm just going to actually demo this one live. If I come into a ticket inside Zoho Desk and I go to write a reply, this little column on the left is actually suggested responses to this customer's question that Zia is pulling up. So Zia can use natural language processing to figure out what this person is maybe asking us, and then if we've created knowledge base articles in our help desk, then Zia can read through those and say, hey, it looks like they're asking about something from this knowledge base article. And then what's really cool is that I can just immediately, instead of having to type out the same answers over and over again as a support person, if it's something that is in the knowledge base, like, this person received the wrong t-shirts in their order, I see that we have a knowledge base article that's all about the return process and what you're supposed to do, right? And Zia has detected that. So I can just click paste to ticket, and then we have a response that explains what they need to do in order to go through the return process, right? So as a support person, I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. I'm trying to get through as many tickets as possible. That makes my job a lot easier. So I already mentioned the auto tags. One thing I didn't mention was sentiment analysis. So Zia can also detect, using NLP, how angry somebody sounds when they submit a help ticket. So you could potentially use that to say, okay, if we have to prioritize which tickets we answer first, maybe we're going to focus on the people who are most upset with us to try and retain them as customers. All right, so moving out of support, let's talk about Zia for productivity. So I know that I have a biased crowd here, though, because we're in a session that's talking about AI. So there's going to be a few more report builders in the room. But we've traveled all around the country doing these seminars, and Travis, a fellow evangelist at Zoho, he asks this question in every city when he's talking about Zoho Analytics. And what we found, which is so funny to us, is that every single city we have gone to, one person raises their hand in the room. It is always one person. It's never two. It's never zero. I don't know what it is. But most people, I have come to learn, just don't like building reports. They like looking at reports. And so I think you saw this a little bit yesterday, but you can now generate reports using natural language processing. So for instance, we can come into Zoho Analytics, and I could say, show me my revenue, and then Zia can do this calculation, right? But then I could add on other parameters. So I could say, show me my revenue by country, and then Zia pulls up a map report where it's broken down by country, and I can hover over one of these dots to see the revenue from a particular place. Or I could say, show me my yearly revenue by country, and then we get this pie chart over each country that shows us our revenue last year and our revenue this year, right? So this is a really, really cool feature that's built into Zoho Analytics, where you can kind of skip the stage of trying to drag on all these things to build a report and just sort of ask for what you want and see if Zia can put it together for you. And usually she'll generate a few suggested reports off of whatever you've typed in. And she's not always going to be right, but usually she'll have something for you, and then you can go in and tweak it if you need to. All right. So we also have Zia built into Zoho Sheets now. So Zoho Sheets is our cloud-based spreadsheet, and very similar to how it works inside Zoho Analytics, you can just have a set of data in your spreadsheet. You click on a Zia button in the bottom right corner, and Zia will suggest a bunch of different possible reports that you could make off of that data. Basically, all you do is you just click and drag the report onto your spreadsheet, and that will save it there as well. And you can also type in and write a query to Zia as well. We also have implemented machine learning techniques inside Zoho Writer. So we have a grammar checker inside Zoho Writer that actually can learn from everybody's suggestions. And so the way that we trained this grammar checker in Zoho Writer is we had this small army of English majors that work out of our Pleasanton office. And so the initial set of data was provided by them, and they could suggest all of these common issues that people make in their writing, and they just had this very boring job for a while where they had to put in all these examples of an incorrect sentence and then a correct one, and they trained Zia. And then now that we're releasing it to the public, now we have this huge data set. So now whenever you accept one of Zia's suggestions or reject one of Zia's suggestions, it's training it and it's getting even smarter over time. And so now we can do things like, besides just a spell check, we could suggest the right version of your. What is it, your with the apostrophe RE, or is it your the other version, right? Also, what's kind of cool is that Zia can make suggestions about your writing too. So here, I decided to test this out by pasting in the 1623 first folio to be or not to be Hamlet speech. And I just wanted to see what Zia would think of that. And Zia said there was 50 spelling errors. And contrary to what my high school English teachers told me, it is indeed fairly difficult to read. So they were wrong, and I was right. And Zia helped me prove it. We have chatbots. So one really cool example of this is that if you're using Zoho Desk and you have knowledge base articles, we have this new feature called ASAP, where you can put a little button on your website, like this one, and then when people click on it, what will happen is it'll open up this little Zia bot on the side of the page. And so somebody could type in a question, and just like that desk auto reply, except from the customer perspective, Zia can pull in answers from the knowledge base and intelligently respond to someone, and then link them to the full knowledge base article as well. So Zia can detect what they say, find the right paragraph within a larger article to respond with, and then also give them the link to a full article. And so we've actually implemented this ourselves. We're currently using the Zia bot for Zoho Backstage support, which is really cool. And you can also make use of this if you're using Zoho Desk. So you can also build your own Zia skills and Zia chatbots. These can be useful for a lot of different things. So for instance, like a lot of effort can go into like qualifying a lead if you're a salesperson. And usually qualifying a lead is like a very structured conversation where you have a set series of questions that you might ask someone to determine whether it's worth moving forward with them. So instead of having people do that, you could just kind of pass that off to Zia, and then when Zia finishes qualifying them, if they are qualified, Zia can pass those people along to a live person. You could also use this for like answering frequently asked questions or booking appointments, for instance. We also have this tool called Zia Search. So it's at search.zoho.com, but Zia Search lets you search across a whole bunch of different applications in the Zoho suite all at once. So if I just type in the name of a customer up here, I could see like any emails where they're mentioned, any click chats where they're mentioned, any documents where they show up. I can see their CRM record, any deals that we might have with them. I could see any tickets they've submitted in Zoho Desk, right? So it gives you this search across tons and tons of different applications. And we call this a Zia ability because it was incredibly, incredibly complicated to build a search that could go through so many applications at once and navigate all of the permissions of what you're allowed to see versus what your boss is allowed to see. So right now, Zia is going to be added into more and more applications. We've already implemented it in a bunch of places, but there's still a lot left to go. Also, one thing that we're hoping on doing, and don't hold your breath, is creating like a Zia onboarding bot for Zoho One. So I assume a lot of you guys are Zoho One users. You've probably realized that when you sign up, holy cow, that's a lot of applications. Which one do I use first? What do I turn on here? What should I do in the beginning to get set up? These are very, very common questions, which we recognize. And so we're going to have a Zia bot that helps you set up your Zoho One account and get you started. So if you're interested in learning more about Zia, you can go to zoho.com/Zia, and that is all I've got. Thank you very much, guys.